right. Welcome, everybody, to the first post-draft edition of the AFC Northcast. Uh, I'm Joey, here as always with the lovely mustachioed Chad.
I can officially now say my team is better than your team.
I can't wait to burn down the Steelers draft. I'm really excited about it.
It
And
won't take you long, all 6 picks.
yeah, if there's some Terps that catch some collateral damage, it's just how it has to be.
And they will.
Today we're going to be covering the Bengals and the Steelers drafts, and then we're going to go around the league a little bit. We're going to hit on the NFC North and East and the AFC East. We'll cover the other half of the division and the other half of the league in our next draft podcast, which might be the end of this week, possibly. We'll see.
We'll see
how
how
it
many
goes.
electrical failures I have in my house that
Yeah.
suspend podcasting for multiple days.
So,
Jesus.
all right. So, the first thing to talk about is the number one pick, Cincinnati. They didn't beef it up on draft night. Oh, let's talk about beer. What do you got there?
This beer is called Luscious. It's an Imperial British Stout. It's by the brewery Alchemist, most famous for Heady Topper IPA. They make a bunch of Imperial Stouts, but this is the best one. And it's most important because, as I told you guys earlier in podcast land, I made a draft bet, that one Tua Tagovailoa would go in the top 15. And he sure did. And this is my sweet, sweet victory prize. A can of delicious craft beer for Tua's excellence. So thank you, George, for honoring our bet. I drink to you and to Tua and to all of our listeners tonight.
Well, I'll see your fine craft beer, and I will raise you a 24-ounce can of Bud Light in my favorite tall boy koozie, which has a little story behind it. I bought it at Camden Yards at the first playoff game in Baltimore to end the 13-year drought. Waited through a 2-hour rain delay to be on the railing on Utah Street in right field. And the Orioles were playing the Yankees, and everything was going great. And they had Jim Johnson, who was like the saves leader in the American League that year.
Mm-hmm.
And in the top of the ninth inning, Raul Ibanez hit like a 3-run home run off Jim Johnson to take the lead for the Yankees, and the Orioles fucking lost it. And so it's good to have little reminders of the pain in your life to bring you back down to earth. What's that?
I love that it just keeps getting taller.
Yeah.
Like, they didn't really widen it much, if at all. They just
take it on up.
Guy it up. Like,
closer to God.
Let's go for 36 ounces with the next one.
Stack another can on top. Oh, man.
Well, that's a winner, Joey. That's a winner. And I like the story. And, sometimes memories have... your fanhood is
right.
deep.
So, speaking of the dimensions of a tall boy can, Joe Burrow, of famed endowment, I guess. I don't know if that's the word that I'm looking for.
I doubt it.
Talking about his piece, everybody.
Okay. Then
there you
yes.
go. Cincinnati didn't beef up the first pick. Okay. Gary's already commenting Korean baseball on ESPN. So, all right. Right on.
Thanks, Gary.
ESPN signed a deal to air like a KBO baseball games live, just to give the people what they want, man, I guess.
Hey, good on them. Live sports.
But yeah, Joe Burrow, obvious number one pick. I think the interesting thing to fall from that was the release of Andy Dalton.
Yeah.
I'm a staunch supporter of rookie quarterbacks sitting, and it seems like no one else in the NFL gives a fuck about it. because none of these guys ever sit anymore.
Some of it is who are they sitting behind? You know, is
Yeah.
Dalton worth learning from? Um, I don't really have an answer to that question. I don't have any reason to say that he doesn't work hard or he's not smart enough, but you could make the case that a guy like Alex Smith, who Patrick Mahomes sat behind, was like a commensurate professional, the type of guy that even if he isn't a Pro Bowl player, you'd want a rookie to learn from just because he's so professional and the way he approaches the game. You can get a lot out of following a player like that. And, I just, who knows? Maybe the Bengals are the Bengals and they didn't see it and they missed it. Or maybe Andy Dalton wasn't the type of guy that they felt like could really do a ton for Joe Burrow, as a professional. I'm with you though. He's going to get killed. We're about to talk about this draft. I think we're both going to like it. But there is one glaring deficiency, and it's that Joe Burrow isn't going to be, much better protected
Yeah, I
than
guess I guess they're kind of just banking on Jonah Williams coming back and that solving their problems.
yeah. So obviously, a lot of people have talked a lot about Joe Burrow for many weeks. Do you feel any real need to talk about him as a player? I dove into him a little bit and just to see what I thought I saw in him as a player, because honestly, I wasn't quite as blown away by him as an NFL prospect as maybe like a lot of people. So if you're willing, I'm going to throw some stuff out there that I saw because
Yeah.
obviously his tape from college is absurd. Like he just does everything
He had
perfect
like the
all the
best
time.
statistical season for a
Right.
college quarterback ever.
So here's some stuff that I saw that he did in his highlights. Because come on, people, I didn't dive back and watch like all the
Yeah,
games. I
let's get
watch
real.
highlights. Okay, this is what I have time to do, and you're lucky for that. These are things I saw in the highlights that I'm not sure will translate to the NFL, but they could. Super mobility in college. He could run away from linebackers and certainly defensive ends. Um, he was stepping into throws under pressure. When he had big guys coming at him and collapsing the pocket, he would step into his throw, even though he might get hit. And that I think was a big part of why he was so accurate with his throws. He didn't always immediately take off outside the pocket. That's a thing we talked about with Baker last year. He was always flushing to his right real quick. Joe would step up into the pocket, a la Tom Brady, when he's playing real well, or Peyton Manning, get that extra moment to survey the field. His eyes are always up. That's a quality we always talk about with Russell Wilson. He's capable of running, but he doesn't necessarily try to run until he's really exhausted all the possibilities of throwing the ball down the field. I think you saw a lot of that with Joe Burrow in his last season of college. And even though he maybe doesn't have the strongest arm, he really fits throws into tight spaces. And I'm not necessarily just talking about like tight man coverage. Like he can fit a throw in the window between a sagging corner and a closing safety, like in between what you would say are the levels of the defense. He's really good at that. Um, these are all things that I think he can do in the NFL, but each one is going to be harder. Like it's going to be harder to do
Right.
any of those skill sets that he displayed in college and the NFL. I don't think he has to do all of them to be a really good quarterback, but if he can't do any of them, which is possible, he's not going to be as fast or faster than everybody anymore. And when you have a terrible offensive line, which still possible. He might not love stepping into those throws either. And with his little arm strength, maybe not being quite as awesome as maybe like a Lamar Jackson or Patrick Mahomes, his timing has to be that much better because everyone's faster closing down those windows in the NFL. So I love it. First round pick, I said it from the get go, got to make it. He's from Ohio. He's the guy to pick. But those are the things that I'm going to kind of watch in the preseason and early on in the season to see if they're translating to the NFL, to see if the Bengals really have something here.
Yeah, yeah. I think they've got something. It it's just I think we've had the conversations about almost the situation that a guy's drafted into has more bearing on their career than what skills they actually have.
Hmm.
And it'll just be interesting to see what they can do. It's not like Cincinnati has a hapless offense, and they've built up the defense a lot in free agency, and so it'll be interesting to see what they do. And until the third day of the draft, um, Burrow and the next pick was the only offensive players that they took. But they did give Joe a nice little weapon. Um, so with the first pick of the second round, Cincinnati drafted T. Higgins,
Hmm.
who's like AJ Green Jr. Basically, I think he had like the largest measured catch radius of any wide receiver in the draft. Um, he's a long guy. Clemson's been talking about him being the next one after following in the line of like Sammy Watkins, DeAndre Hopkins, those guys. Um, so he's the next king shit from Clemson, and no matter what happens with AJ, he'll get a year. As long as AJ doesn't get dealt this season, he'll get a year with AJ to learn some things, and they could be a pretty formidable wide receiver core with the two of them and Boyd. Um, it
And
could be
John Ross.
nasty. Yeah, for now.
John Ross, who the Bengals elected not to sign the 5th-year option, but for 1 year, he will be running his little tail off to try and get that next contract from somewhere.
Till that
Yeah,
hamstring goes.
yeah, I mean the receiver group looks really strong if healthy for sure. T. Higgins is a big guy. He's 6'4", 215 pounds, which is big, big for a wide receiver. The one difference between him and AJ Green, the thing that really makes him the junior, is lack of athleticism. He did not test well at the combine. He can't jump high enough. He can't jump out of a swimming pool. He can't run faster than a deer. He can't lift more than a gorilla. These are problems. These are big time problems. And that's why he dropped from probably like a top 15 pick in the
Yeah.
lanes of CD Lamb and Judy and apparently Ruggs, all the way down to the second round. But the thing is on the TV while he's playing football, he's just doing everything really well. And turns out with like a high ankle sprain all year,
Yeah.
right? Or was that Judy? No, that was Judy. I might be mixing that up actually.
Judy
I
has
don't know.
a knee stuff.
Okay, so he did, because I thought I heard that his routes, he's doing a lot of this stuff on an ankle. I think I'm remembering that right. Anyway, so a little bit limited as an athlete, but like you said, great catch radius, really good at contested catches. And hey, if you can't outrun and outjump everybody, it's good to just be able to take the football from them. And it seems that he can do that. So this is
Yep.
great. I mean, if we learned anything from Peyton Manning, it's that you always want to draft a receiver with your rookie quarterback so that they can grow up together like little buddies. There'll be like all sorts of memes of them cuddling each other, like the dogs and the
Yeah.
cats, and Marvin Harrison and Peyton Manning. Um, so yeah, I think this is a great pick. I think if I remember correctly, I talked with enthusiasm about the possibility of the Steelers drafting T. Higgins because I thought he was continuing to drop. So obviously, I like the player. Um, so far so good for the Bengals, improving that roster.
Yeah, yeah, I like this pick a lot, and he's gonna see second and or third corner down the depth chart all year, um, and that's helpful. I mean, Joe Burrow between the three of them and Mixon, like he's got the weapons that he needs. If Zach Taylor can draw some shit up, like he's played in a pro style offense, like they did
Yeah.
well on the skill position standpoint.
And of course, we all want to acknowledge that major contribution for rookie wide receiver would be something along the lines of just under 60 catches
I was gonna
for
say 50 catches.
700-800 yards. That's what Deontay Johnson did for the Steelers last year when he was pressed into kind of starting duty. Juju Smith-Schuster was kind of in that range as a rookie. Also, I think it was around 50 catches for 900 yards maybe, and 8 touchdowns. So, we're not talking about a Julio Jones season here, people. Like
Right.
T. Higgins will be the third option, at best, and he he's on the field 50-60% of the time, maybe, if he beats out John Ross. Either way, though, great spot for the Bengals to be in with him learning behind AJ Green and Tyler Boyd, frankly, as you said. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
this is good stuff.
if they can utilize Tyler Boyd in the slot more, like that maximizes Tyler Boyd rather than the last year him having to be the number one guy and try to do everything.
Yeah, that's a
So
good stuff, and we're going to talk about this a little bit more when we get to the Steelers as well. But you've got a guy like when you can make a contested catch, you don't have to teach him the whole playbook. You can get him the red zone offense because guess what? He can contested catch. He can catch fades. You can do simple route things for him that getting against that NFL speed and get him into it without necessarily having to have full mastery over the entire offense, which is great.
yeah. All right, you ready to go to round three for the Bengals?
Yeah, I am.
So
I am.
three out of the last five guys that they drafted addressed a pretty glaring need on this
Mm-hmm.
team, which was linebacker position. And we could talk about these guys together or separately. I think they're kind of in different leagues. But Logan Wilson, linebacker from Wyoming, who is likely going to start for them eventually, if not this year.
Yeah, he's got to beat out. Jermaine Pratt
Pratt,
being there, and then what do they move the one safety Williams into linebacking at
right?
all, or did they do anything with? I think it was Josh Bynes, right? That they picked up,
Yeah.
or am I mixing it up? LJ
No,
Ford.
you're right. Binds.
Okay, so he might have to work his way into the lineup.
Yep. And Akeem Davis Gaither from App State. So both of these guys are from smaller schools. But both of them, for small school guys, we talked about it with the safety. Uh, I don't remember what school he went to. You were talking about a safety last week that did everything for the football team. I mean, these guys did everything for their teams. Uh,
Yeah,
Logan Wilson and Akeem Davis Gaither. Davis Gaither played a little bit of outside linebacker too. They moved him around a lot because when you play uh, championship series college football, like you're probably the best athlete on the field all the time, and that's good. Reading about Logan Wilson, he's kind of in college. He was like your prototype Luke Kuechly type of linebacker, and I think the vibe on him is that he's going to be somewhere between the floor being like a Nick Vigil, which the Bengals have, and the ceiling being like a Luke
don't
Kuechly,
need that.
and
That's
most
better.
likely he'll be something in between. I mean, Kuechly is exceptional, was exceptional.
So I want to go one at a time because I'm excited about Logan Wilson.
Yeah,
I
let's
can't
talk about
talk
Logan
about it.
Wilson then.
So I didn't know who he was when I started looking at this, and I watched a little bit of tape on everybody. So the first thing I did was read about him a little bit. He was a captain on his team for 3 years. Okay, so sophomore, junior, and senior year, he was a team captain at Wyoming. He is just always running, chasing the play. Like this guy, he just doesn't get tired ever. When you turn on his tape, and by tape again, 5.5 minutes of highlights,
Yeah,
people.
YouTube.
Yeah, maybe 8 minutes if I was getting real fired up. Um, Dude, he hits hard. Like he runs through the ball carrier, but he's a form tackler. He does it with technique. Like you got to love this guy's tackling. And if you've listened to one episode in season of this podcast, you know that the Bengals don't tackle anybody. So this is great stuff. Like he is a perfect fit, even if not this year, to develop into. And also, the other thing I noticed is that he really gets great depth when he's in zone coverage. He will really drop weight. He can get back, which some linebackers struggle with. You know a little bit about that as a Ravens fan. He can really sink deep and take away a lot of the middle of the field for the quarterback. So I actually really liked him having never heard of him. And the other troubling thing is that I don't know if you remember, Joey, but we had predicted a linebacker to go to the Bengals, one Willie Gay Jr. And I am legitimately pissed because this guy is like the opposite of Willie Gay Jr.
Yeah.
He's like totally awesome and he's awesome off the field. He's like he should not be on the Bengals. Like this is not cool. I'm not only a little bit jealous, but maybe a little bit worried that this franchise is starting to figure out how to draft players that are good without them being criminals because I'm troubled. This is Willie Gay Jr.'s opposite. I might have to like him. I might
Oh
have to like this
no!
guy.
Until the Bengals are good, and then you'll hate him.
Yeah, well,
It's
yeah,
easy to like him. That's like Baker's rookie year. We're like, oh, I kind of like this guy Baker, and then like a couple close calls in some Ravens games, and then they beat him early this year, and I was like, no, I'm done with Baker. Fuck that guy.
yeah. So I don't know. I don't know if he'll be starting or anything because Pratt kind of grew into it a little bit as he went on, and Bynes is obviously going to have a big head start because he's a veteran. But do you expect to see him on the field
Yeah.
for sure, and he won't just have to be a 1-2 down player either. Because I was impressed with his zone coverage. I don't know if he's going to keep up in man coverage, but you can scheme around that.
Yeah, and if you're the Bengals and you're looking long term, and the off season's going to be weird this year, so that's to the detriment of all rookies,
Sure.
as far as getting starting spots. But Josh Bynes is not long for the Bengals starting linebacker spot. Like, like he's a stopgap guy. He's filling a hole, and I think the Bengals hope Logan Wilson step into that role sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and you started to talk about. Are you done with
Yeah, yeah,
Wilson? So you started to talk about Gaither, and the reason I'm segueing into him is because I saw some similarities actually in his game. He's much more explosive as an athlete, super fast. Like you
yeah.
could see it. Um, and he uses his body as a weapon. Like he hits people hard also, but
Kind
he
of
also
Bob Sanders esque the way
yeah, and
he
that's a good
like
comparison
is
because
reckless
it's
with his
not as
body.
but he's not as reckless as like Palomalu who would miss tackles because of it. Like I felt like watching his tape quote that he maintained a level of form that made me confident that he could translate that style into the NFL and at least hit the person that he's aiming at. So I liked it. I liked it. I don't know if he'll be big enough and strong enough to make it work. Um, but the Bengals have a crazy good defensive line, and if they can learn how to keep blockers off of Davis Gaither, he could really become a threatening, big time playmaker. Maybe not with the ceiling of a Ryan Shazier, but a guy that can just shoot through a gap and just blow up plays so fast. Um, so good luck, Bengals. This will be a fun guy to try to coordinate into your defense. He's a fun highlight to watch. He really uses his body as a weapon, and I think if you like football, that's a statement that you make with enthusiasm.
Yeah, yeah. He could be a very beneficial immediately on special teams from that standpoint, with the
Agreed.
athleticism and the tackling, and I mean Lou Anarumo has a lot at his disposal now. The DC of the Bengals. Um, and the more that he can get creative and get these guys on the field, they're good athletes, and um, this division is not a high flying four wide spread division. Like everybody in this division is going to run the football, and so there's still definitely a use for linebackers in
Yeah,
our division, maybe more than any other in the league.
you could definitely make that case. And I would say, like, up to this point, also, it feels like these picks all had pretty good value.
Yeah,
It didn't feel like the Bengals were really reaching for a player yet. Um, I didn't know who Logan Wilson was, but as far as the linebackers in the class, he's seemed to be pretty highly regarded by all the draft people. So,
yeah.
nothing too silly yet. these are players that we like their potential, and they seem to be drafted at a value, which is something you like because you have to, because it's the compliment that the Ravens get every year around this time.
Yeah.
Great value. Oh, it's such good value. Oh wow, it's all this value.
Oh,
Um,
just you wait.
so this is good. Third and fourth round, two linebackers. Maybe just let them compete against each other. Even separate the wheat from the chaff. See who's a good college player and who's going to be an NFL player. So that's fun.
Yeah.
It'll be fun room to keep track of during preseason. These guys will be flying around. Both should contribute on special teams for sure.
Yeah, we should get a healthy dose of both these guys in the preseason. That'll be fun to watch, I think.
Yeah, I'll definitely be finding their numbers for sure. So now we're starting to get to the back end. So these are players that, let's be honest with ourselves, it's hard to say. So,
Yeah,
but you
yeah.
know what? Everybody matters in the AFC North. Everybody matters. So in the fifth round, Khalid Kareem, edge defender from Notre Dame. We are fully into the realm of I hadn't heard of these players anymore when I had to look them up and watch their tape. Um, what I noticed about him is that I liked his swim move. He was an edge guy, but he could cut back into the inside. And in my world, if you cut back into the inside as an edge defender, you're tough. You're tough because now you are re entering the trenches. And so I don't know if he has like the full repertoire of edge, pass rush moves, but I like the swim move inside, and I think he's strong enough that he could be a good edge setter in the running game. I liked his potential there. That's probably a bit down the road for him, um, but there is enough potential there that I thought that he might have a role on a defense in the NFL because he can both rush the passer, and it looked to me like he could be a run stopper on the edge there.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he adds depth to, I mean, a really strong unit already. So it's uphill sledding, I think. He may end up being like a practice squad guy, or, I mean, if he can shine in the preseason, get picked up somewhere else. Um, but
I mean,
yeah,
practice squad would be great. The last thing I wrote down about him is like, look, if you can't learn from Carlos Dunlap and Chris Hubbard and Carl Lawson at your position, then you're probably not long for the league.
yeah,
So he's tough, he's strong, and he's got a whole room full of guys that are good at their craft.
yep. And all right, so next in the sixth round, Hakeem Adeniji, offensive tackle from Kansas. The Bengals have been in dire need of some offensive line help, with the rotation at center and guard last year, and their number one pick last season getting hurt in camp. And I guess they're just kind of treating Jonah Williams as a draft pick, a first round draft pick for this season. Because I mean, a sixth round offensive tackle is not really what you're looking for to shore up the O line.
We're
Even
gonna
though
try, yeah.
Daniel Jeremiah gave this pick the top value of round 6. So there's your little plug for value. Daniel Jeremiah said that this pick was the best value pick of round 6.
Woo! Blow on those vuvuzuelas.
Yeah.
Celebrate. Um, yeah. If we're gonna be pretty nice to the Bengals in this today, I think. But if we were going to be mean, this is the crack in the dam that we would be digging at with our fingernails. The fact that they waited until the sixth round to draft an offensive lineman. Um, they just need to have their offensive line play well, and they've got young players that maybe it'll be better than last year. This guy, he's listed as a tackle, but he kind of has a guard look to him. I think he played a little guard. I didn't write a lot of notes, but I did write guard question mark. So I came across something probably in the Dane Brugler's report that he might translate more as a guard in the NFL. And he's not super strong. but he's got good technique. So he can play multiple positions and he has good technique. So that makes him kind of your ideal sixth or seventh man on the offensive line. And that's an important thing because occasionally in jumbo packages, you play with that player, but also people get hurt and you need to have somebody that can step in and not totally blow it because it only takes one guy not knowing his assignment to let Von Miller just run straight in for zero point 0.6 seconds and injure your quarterback. So, um, yeah, he's a 6th round pick. They really could have used a higher ceiling guy, even with Jonah Williams coming in this year. But they didn't. So, you hope that he comes in and frankly doesn't learn from anybody. You hope that he's just a self-starter that listens to his coaches and works super hard. And I mean, the Steelers have 3 of their 5 offensive linemen were undrafted, so for sure, it probably won't happen this year though. Joe Burrow is going to have to be as mobile as he is advertised to be,
Yeah,
because Hakeem Adeniji is going to be watching it from the sidelines.
if he's lucky.
Right. Um, And that brings us to the final man, and the Bengals tripled up on linebacker. Marcus Bailey out of Purdue. What do you think of this guy? You think anything?
I have no thoughts about him. Uh, I wasn't gonna watch linebacker tape on a 7th round draft pick. Um,
Guess who was? Overachieving Chad,
there you go.
also known as Steeler Chad, also known as bet winning Chad. What I liked about Marcus Bailey was his kind of combo skill set on tape. His best highlights were either his blitzing or his coverage. Um, So again, you know, Pratt kind of came along in coverage last year, but it definitely he wasn't as good as maybe he was advertised to be, and he will hopefully be better this year. But if Bailey can translate that athleticism in that coverage blitzing role, you can put him on the field. Opposing teams won't know what he's doing necessarily because he can do two kind of opposite things well, and that gives him, to me, especially with such a weak linebacker room, um, and those skills, in my opinion, translate really well to special teams. He can blitz and he can cover, which means he should be on kick coverage teams, or at least he should compete to be. Um, I think he actually has a chance to make the team.
All right. Well, there you have it. Marcus Bailey on the
Yeah,
53.
you heard it here. Top 10 times you heard it. Um, so overall, you got to like this draft. They got their hopefully franchise quarterback. They got an offensive skill player for him to grow with. They filled out a couple defensive need positions, and they had so many needs that they had to ignore a couple. So that's life when you're coming from the
Yeah.
bottom, you know? Um, but it's hard to complain. The Bengals should be really excited right now. Like, this is a very exciting time. This is your LeBron, right? He's from Ohio. He's not LeBron. Nobody's LeBron. But you can pretend. Just be excited.
Yeah, there's no reason not to be excited. I think anytime you have that 1st round quarterback coming in, you know he's going to start now, barring anything really absurd happening and Ryan Finley lighting the world on fire. Um, so he's your guy, and just be patient because there's still, like we said, there's still weaknesses that the Bengals were not able to address this year. So there's going to be some growing pains, and it's going to suck for a little while. And who knows? Maybe AJ Green exaggerates injuries all year again and doesn't play for the Bengals at all. Like, it's very possible. And so just be patient, and the Bengals will give Zach Taylor a long leash if history repeats itself. If we've learned anything about their organization, they're not just going to cut bait on Zach Taylor in the 2nd year. So he has his quarterback now, so he's tied to Burrow pretty much, and I think there's reason for optimism. It was a good draft.
Yeah,
They did well.
yeah, definitely. Like you could make the case that it was the best draft in the division, and that's saying something because there was a lot of really good drafts in this division. Speaking of really good drafts in this division, should we talk about the team that everyone seems to agree had the worst draft in the division?
Sure.
And for the record, that's the Steelers. And also, part B of for the record, everyone seems to like the Steelers draft. They just only had 6 picks,
Yeah, it's hard.
and everyone else had really good drafts. Like, we'll talk about the Browns and the Ravens later, but it's all value. We're going to talk a lot about value next week or whenever we do it. And then the Bengals got like the quarterback of the future. So like you can't compete with that. How do you compete with that?
Yeah.
How do you compete with that? I'll tell you how. First, you skip the first. That's the first thing. That's what the Steelers did. We're not going to talk about Minka. I'm not going to be one of those guys. I'm not going to be one of those guys that says with the 18th pick of the first round, the Steelers select Minka Fitzpatrick, who is a trillion times better than every safety that was available this year. And the Steelers, you know it, they would have reached. They would have just taken the safety they liked because they don't care about value. They're like the opposite of the Ravens. They get to this, they get it to the same place. They get good players, but they
Yeah.
don't do it the same way.
Yeah.
Steelers don't give a shit about value. They're like, oh, is he the 70th ranked player? I love him. I love him.
Yeah.
I'm taking him now. That's what they did with TJ Watt. That's a good version. That's what they did with Artie Burns. It's a bad version. Um, so we skipped the first round, Minka. And with the second round, and I am so upset with myself that I didn't talk about this guy because Joey, you know it. You know it. I texted you. I said I had a draft crush. We talked about our little draft crushes. Who's the player that we want to see? And I said it, but I just didn't think they would take him because it didn't seem to fit. But the Steelers, they don't care about fitting. They don't care about numbers. They took Chase Claypool, wide receiver out of Notre Dame. He is a giant man. He's 6'4". He weighs like 240 pounds. He's so big that they asked him to do tight end drills at the combine. He said, sure, yeah, I can do that stuff. You know why? Because he loves blocking. He's a man. He beats people up. He loves that shit. He played special teams at Notre Dame, had like 25 special teams tackles. He's a monster. He loves that stuff. He's, technique wise, yeah, he needs a little developing as a blocker. But guess what? When you're blocking a corner and you're as big as he is, you just get to have fun beating him. I'm very excited. This was my guy. I can't believe the Steelers ended up with him. Of course, they could have traded back and probably still got him, which was my big dream, but they didn't do that. Not really a Steelers thing to do. Um, but he's a good player. Like if you're talking about a shortened off season and a player that's going to contribute right away, perfect fit. He plays special teams. He blocks. He contested catches like a boss. Ben Roethlisberger loves this pick. Loves it, loves it, loves it, loves it. What have we learned about Ben Roethlisberger over the last 14 years?
He doesn't
If he
read
like
defenses.
No, and if he likes you, he will throw it to you. Like, thank God he's as accurate as he is because he doesn't give a fuck about who's guarding who or where they're at in the field. He will throw it to Chase. If Chase does anything to like he will get the ball. So he doesn't have to learn a ton of plays. He's not a super polished route runner, but he's actually better after the catch than it seems. He's a little bit of a lumbery guy, but he ran fast at the combine. Dude, he's just going to jump up high and catch the ball because he's bigger than people, and he's going to be deceptively useful in the run game because of his blocking. This is a good pick. Like, the Steelers got a good player here, and also, should I say the thing that we always say? Steelers are great at drafting wide receivers, right? So now we know he's the best one, right?
That's the only thing, like, I think in his favor. I don't know. I'm not in love with Chase Claypool. I didn't really read much about him before the draft, and I started watching his highlight video, and like I guess like he's solid in like blocking and like all that stuff, but like what a boring video. Oh my god.
What?
Like, he's not a flashy guy after the catch.
Well,
He's
he's
not
too big.
like winning jump balls. Like, he's a big bodied guy. Like,
He is winning jump balls.
that's
It
what
just
he
doesn't look
is.
like it because he's so much bigger. He's
I
so
guess.
much bigger.
I mean, he is, as to me, in the passing game specifically, he's like a one trick pony guy. He's a big body. Like, he's going to use his body like a tight end almost. Is he going to razzle dazzle you after the catch? Nope. Uh, he had some plays in college where he took some screen passes, 15, 20 yards. Is he going to do that in the pros? Maybe. If
Definitely.
he can body a corner, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not. He's not exciting to me, I guess is the thing. But
All right. So we'll agree he's going to use his body like a tight end that can run a 4.42 40 quick. Exactly. So we're both really excited about Chase Claypool because that's what we forgot to mention. Who are the people that are over 6'4" and however much he weighs and ran a 4.40? Chase Claypool and Calvin Johnson. So look, if you're a homer and you want to be excited about Chase Claypool, he's the next Calvin Johnson. If you're a homer and you want to be slightly more reasonable, he is a bigger, faster, more versatile version of T. Higgins. He's got a big catch radius. He's can contested catch, and he'll actually play special teams and block. Like so, he's better, and he's a slightly worse route runner. Now that's the Homer way of saying that. That's the Steelers way of saying that, right? But honestly, they're comparable. Like they're comparable in the things they do, especially early in their careers. So Chase Claypool is basically the best player in this draft, and the Steelers managed to get him at the 49th pick.
value, holy shit.
Nailed it. The Steelers nailed value yet again. But yeah, this year he just has to be honestly what you described, and Ben will throw him the ball in the red zone, and he will improve the Steelers offense. Um, Even if he is no more than what you said and far less than what I said. Um, Third round, Alex Highsmith. You have thoughts?
I do like this guy.
Of course you do. Can't not like this guy.
So the Steelers, credit to the Steelers, I don't think that any of like their weaknesses or draft needs were like glaring fatal flaws in their team. And a lot of them had to do with contract situations and looking down the road, and this addressed one of them. Basically, Alex Highsmith is a guy, an edge guy from Charlotte. So he played at a smaller school. He's kind of small, but I mean, he'll hit a professional weight room and a professional nutritionist, and they'll get that taken care of. But he is
6'3", 250.
Yep.
Remind me what Ray Lewis was again?
6', 240.
Okay. Now
So Alex Highsmith's a little long for an edge guy. He's not a middle linebacker. It's a different. All right, it's a different game, Chad. And Ray Lewis was undersized. That's why he dropped to the Ravens. Anyways, but I mean, the idea is that he can learn and ease his way into the defense behind Watt and Dupree. And when the Steelers tell Bud Dupree to go elsewhere, Alex Highsmith is ready to step up and fill that role. And I think that he is pretty damn close to a Bud Dupree and can fill those shoes pretty nicely.
He played at a small school. Did you by any chance catch the quote that was given about him by one Dabo Sweeney, coach of Clemson, who he played against?
No, I saw some of his highlights against Clemson.
Yeah, let me dial that quote up here. He is the best player we have seen. That was the best player we have seen. Just to fill in your analysis a little bit on Alex Highsmith, he is 6'3" and 248 pounds, which is small for an edge player. Guess what he played all the way until his senior year for Charlotte? What position? Do you know what position he played? It was not edge or outside linebacker.
Defensive tackle.
He played defensive end, like he
Okay.
played on the defensive
Yeah.
line, right? So he was grinding in the trenches at that size for his whole college career. And then senior year, he got moved to the edge. What did he do immediately? He got 14 and a half sacks and 21 and a half tackles for loss. He exploded. So you can say, oh, he's a 1 year guy. He exploded. Well, guess what? He only played 1 year at his position. Because if you think he's small for an edge player, he's sure as heck small for playing against, like, right there in the defensive team by a guard and a tackle every play. You kid, crazy. Here's how it benefited him, though. You watch that tape. He can zip to the outside and win the corner, a la Bud Dupree. Bud Dupree likes to run around that corner. So does Von Miller. Not comparing him to Von Miller, just comparing him to Von Miller. But he's also very comfortable countering to the inside. He's tough. He will go back to the inside and he will swim it in. And he's used to doing that. He's used to being in the trenches. The other thing he's used to, working for the whole play. Because if he doesn't beat you right away, he's going to grind that whole play. He's got a motor. He has a lot of sacks where he just keeps working, keeps working, keeps working. Um, this is a great pick that we're probably going to forget about because the Steelers do rotate their edge defenders, but not like a ton. Like Bud Dupree and Watt, they're going to play a
Yeah.
lot, and he's going to still have to beat Ola Adeniyi and maybe Ulysses Gilbert III to get playing time. And you know what? Don't worry about it, Steeler fans. This is like highlight era Steelers drafting right here. This is a need because we only have Bud Dupree for 1 year, probably. And then all of a sudden next year, people are like, oh, yeah, who's that guy? Oh, yeah, I heard he's pretty
Mm-hmm.
good, maybe a little bit. Didn't he
Mm-hmm.
have that one strip sack fumble safety in that preseason game? And then he's
Right.
going to have 9 sacks in 2 years.
Yep.
And like he's going to be our next great edge player. So this is a fun guy. And he's a former walk on. So he's got that edge to him. He's a guy that's going to come in there and he's going to love that he's not supposed to be good compared to the other players on the team. He's going to love that TJ Watt and Bud Dupree are the guys and he's an afterthought. You know what? He's going to want to be better than them. That's going to be his attitude. Like, he's a guy. He's a dude.
Yeah,
We're
he's definitely
psyched.
a dude.
Um, Yeah, you might have to bring some of the enthusiasm here on this next one, Joey.
Oh man. So, all right. So this next pick, the Steelers' first pick of the fourth round, is Anthony McFarland, running back from the University of Maryland. Um, he's a guy that battled some injuries in college, but every time he touched the ball, it was apparent that he had he has this crazy potential. He had back-to-back 200-yard rushing games against like Minnesota and Ohio State this year.
300 against Ohio State.
Right. And those are both teams that were in the top 5 of good bit of the year. So when he was able to get a workload, he capitalized on it. He's got breakaway speed. He's kind of a one cut and go type of guy. Um, the only drawback on him, the only obvious drawback on the field, is that you don't see him when you're watching highlights breaking lots of tackles. He's kind of small. He may shed an arm tackle in the hole, but after that, he just wants to go. He wants to find the hole, hit it, and go up the seam and outrun everybody. That's his thing. So he'll add some versatility to the Steelers' backfield. He definitely has tools. He can definitely be a weapon when used properly, but he's not an all-purpose guy yet. He could he could he could evolve into one, but right now he's not, and that's why he's a fourth round pick.
Yeah, so the Steelers have tried this periodically. They tried it to great success with Fast Willie Parker. They tried it to much less success with a guy named, I want to say, Isaac Rainey. Um, they periodically draft these. They call them scat backs. Scat. Um, I'm a little nervous. Uh, I don't know if he can pass protect, and if he can't, he's going to have a really hard time getting on the field. Um, and if he doesn't get, and then it's over. Then he's useless. Because the Steelers already have James Conner and Benny Snell, and what's his face kind of stank later in
Kareth
the
White.
Jalen Samuels, Kareth White. Like it's plausible that he gets on the practice field this year and he's like just worse than Kareth White, and then you're just like,
Right.
shit. Um, However, in his favor, I will say that he uses his speed to maximum benefit. When you watch his highlights, he he's just like one of those guys that it doesn't seem like anyone understands how fast he is. He ran a 4.440. So he's not like Chris Johnson. He's not out there setting records or anything. But it just seems like his game speed is even
Yeah.
faster than his track track speed. Um, and he uses that to his advantage because you see these defenders take bad angles and he either outruns them to the corner and just goes down the sideline for an 80-yard touchdown, or he uses that speed to create these bad angles and then defenders try to tackle him kind of sloppy, and that's when he breaks the arm tackle, or that's they take the bad angle, and that's when he has enough lateral movement that he can take advantage of that panicked defender who realizes they took a bad angle, and then
Yeah.
he, like when he plays a strong athlete who also understands what they're doing, like I can just tell you right now, and this is going to sound obvious, but a guy like Bobby Wagner would make him look like an idiot,
Yeah.
because he's not going to take a bad angle and he's not going to panic and he's just going to tackle him
Right.
for a 2-yard loss. Or hopefully a 2-yard gain because our offensive line is sick. Um, but, he might be a good player. He might be. I've just seen the Steelers fail at this before. This is in my opinion, not a position that the Steelers can get in there and see what no one else sees consistently, like they might with Chase Claypool. That's like a thing that you automatically kind of bump him up a little bit just because of their track record. With these like super fast running backs, you kind of think maybe that the Steelers are just thinking, okay, this is a tool that we don't maybe have in the shed right now. Super breakaway speed. I'll take it and see if we can use it. And I'm nervous, at least for this year, because if he can't pass protect and do some of these basic things, and his speed doesn't translate at an NFL level, he's all of a sudden going to be he's going to go from one dimension to whatever's less than that,
Yeah.
disappearing
Yeah.
practice squad or
His
less.
uh his go-to move in the hole is like he'll give you the dead leg, where he'll like let you flail at the one leg and he'll just like slide it out and go.
Yeah.
Um, I will say Maryland football is by no means a powerhouse. Um, he is my favorite Maryland football player to watch since Lamont Jordan. I don't know if you remember that guy. He had a decent professional career as a running back for the Raiders and the Jets.
Oh, okay. I wasn't remember.
So
Yes.
it's been a while. But it was weird because Lamont Jordan was a bell cow back for the Terps, and McFarland, for one reason or another, injuries. There's some whispers of like he's kind of immature off the field and in the locker room, and has some personality stuff to that nature. Just could never become the guy for the Terps, and so that's concerning too. But
Yeah, I
Pittsburgh
heard
has a
both.
strong locker room, so
Yeah. And like Maryland during his early years was like, weren't they severely punished for hazing? And I heard he was maybe involved in have helping the players like stand up against some of the they had a player die.
they
That's
had
what it
an
was.
offensive tackle die,
Um,
and then there was a bunch of stuff that came out about force feeding players and all kinds of crazy shit. Yeah,
yeah. So some of the people that I heard defend his character were saying that he was basically just defending the players against that stuff, and he was one of the early people that spoke out to their rights. Um, I would say at the very least he's exciting, you know. So if he's gonna fail with us cheering for him to do exciting, spectacular things. So you know, if you're a football fan that likes watching the skill players hold the ball and do crazy stuff, hey, yeah, that's all of us. Yeah. Then he's going to be a guy we cheer for just
yeah,
because he's a big play guy. And he, like you said, he has proven that he has enough competitive edge that he might do it. I mean, Maryland wasn't a great team and he crushed Ohio State. I
yeah,
mean, crushed them like
yeah.
300 yards against Ohio State. That is not a normal thing to do. Um, so I wasn't pumped. You know, there's other positions I thought the Steelers needed more. I wasn't one of the people that wanted them to necessarily draft a running back. But I will certainly be cheering for him to score some long touchdowns and do some jazzy stuff. But let's talk about a real fourth round pick, a real exciting fourth round pick
Ugh.
that I bet neither of us had ever heard of, but now you
Yeah.
are peanut butter and jealous. Kevin Dotson out of Louisiana Lafayette. How about this guy? Did you go back and watch that stuff against Alabama?
I
Come on,
did.
tell me you watch that stuff. Oh my God. Oh my God. So, Kevin Dotson was the right guard for Louisiana Lafayette. The right tackle for Louisiana Lafayette was Robert Hunt. He got drafted in the second round by Miami. So, these two together were called the Bayou Bullies. That was
It's
their
awesome.
nicknames. Yeah, right? So I don't even know where to start here. He was an All American, but he didn't get invited to the combine. This is where I feel like both of our teams, you can count on them to find these little diamonds. And this time it was us with this particular player. And now everybody is seeing it. Like you're seeing articles all across the board. If the Steelers did one thing right, like this is the thing they did right in this draft is draft Kevin Dotson. He is a huge dude. I don't have his exact measurables here, but the important thing is that he's bigger than everybody. He's not bigger than everybody, but he's big and he is strong. Like he is the type of offensive lineman that moves people away. He pushes them yards down the field, 4 yards into the end zone, 10 yards down the field. He will just bully the crap out of people and don't even talk about when he gets his hands on a linebacker. Oh my God. It's like he's holding a stuffed animal or something. This guy is just he's a lawnmower. Like he's crazy. Dane Brugler described him as moving players like he's a pissed off bouncer. So imagine a defensive lineman to him is like a drunk 100-pound college girl that wants to be continued to serve Kahlua shots. And she threw her shoe at somebody. Like that is how he treats defensive linemen. I'm going to stop for a minute. What do you think about this guy?
I think he's great as a power guard. Specifically, when you watch his tape from last season, his highlight tape is like Georgia, Bama, Texas A&M. Like it's not like a cream puff schedule, and he's pushing around these SEC defensive linemen. It's impressive. Power's the name of his game. You know, um, that's what he's going to do. But he's going to bring that edge and that attitude to your offensive line, that bully mentality.
And they could use it because the Steelers, honestly, especially without Ramon Foster, who retired, they're more technicians. They're stronger in the passing game than the running game because of that. They don't have a lot of that bully type player. Marquise Pouncey is small for a center. He's a technician. You know, like David DeCastro is highly mobile, and he's got a little bit of sass about him, but he's not like necessarily like a huge bully guy either. He plays right guard. Um, so left guard would be where Kevin Dotson would have to learn to fit in, because I don't care how big and mean you are, you're not better than David DeCastro. But I mean, it's crazy. Like I kept hearing like, "Oh, this guy's pretty good. This guy's pretty good." And then I found this video from behind the steel curtain which showed him and Robert Hunt like highlights against Alabama, in which Alabama, I think they beat him by like 40, and they took their defensive line, which at the time consisted of Quinnen Williams, who for the record was the third overall pick in the draft in 2018, I think. It also had Raekwon Davis, who was a second round pick this year, and Isaiah Buggs, who was drafted by the Steelers last year. So these are NFL players, and they annihilated them. And then Alabama was winning by a lot, so they took their starters out. But they just got mowed down by the running game, which ended up, I
Yeah.
think, around 300 yards, which was like the fifth most that Alabama has given up in their. And so they had to bring him back in, and then the starters continued to get manhandled by Robert Hunt and Kevin Dotson. So, I mean, like, don't be afraid of the smallish school. Like, this
Yeah.
guy is the real deal, and he might not start this year either. This might be me just being excited about 2 years from now for a lot of this stuff. But, like, a lot of times, fourth round picks are not necessarily players that you can count on. And I think, like, honestly, we should assume that this guy is going to be a starting lineman in the NFL within the next 2 years. And if it's not for the Steelers, it's because they blew it. Like, this is a guy. This is another dude. We got another
Yeah.
dude on our hands. Um, I know that most of us watch the ball, but we should just all celebrate that the Steelers got this guy in the fourth round, because they only got 6 picks, and this was the diamond in the rough right here. This was a.
Yeah. Yeah. He's a good one. Ugh.
It's okay. We can go back to another bad one from your school.
Makes me sick. I couldn't believe after the Steelers drafted my favorite Terp in like a decade plus, and they drafted another Terp at like my favorite like position to watch in football. Like, ugh. Um, Antoine Brooks Jr. Is probably not gonna be like a long time NFL player. Um, but he's fun to talk about. He was a do everything safety for the Terps. He was always around the ball. He is not afraid to tackle. He's a very physical tackler. Um, he's really fun to watch as a safety and like a second level Power Five school. Like, he's great.
Yeah, I watched his highlights and I decided, like, is there anything that gets this guy more excited than like a swing pass or a bubble screen? Because when he
Right?
can see that ball go out and he can downhill it,
Yeah.
like, he's like a dog chasing the mail truck. And he uses his body like a missile. And I know I've talked about that with a couple of other players, but I want to emphasize missile and not technique here. This is the most reckless
Yeah.
use of the body that I saw of anyone that I've watched yet. He just launches himself into the air at full speed, and usually it's enough at the college level. I don't know if he's going to play linebacker or safety or special teams or just get cut. He's an animal. I mean,
Yeah.
he's an animal. He
So
he
fun.
he he. Mike Tomlin has a lot of quotable statements,
God, I
but
bet Mike Tomlin loves this guy.
yeah, so one of the things that he says about players is that I would rather have to tell them whoa than get. Um, and this is that type of player, like it's the type of player that Mike Tomlin's going to have to tell to slow down. And that's what
Yeah.
he would rather do. Like, he wants players that are aggressive and playful. And if he can coach them into good decision making, which he was able to do with guys like Ryan Shazier, still there. Great.
Yeah, I'm here.
Then that's awesome. And he if he can stick by playing good special teams and channeling his aggression, he could maybe be a good middle linebacker if he puts on a few pounds, or a nickel safety that kind of plays in the box, or something like that. I'm not going to call this guy a diamond in the rough. I think he's got an uphill battle ahead of him, but he is fun. I mean, he's like, again, if you watch preseason Steelers, you should learn his number because he's probably going to hit somebody on the sidelines on accident or something. Like he's just,
Yeah, and
he,
and if you're a fan of one of these teams that has like a legendary safety and you really enjoy and enjoy watching safeties make big hits and make plays on balls, like go watch his college highlights because it's an entertaining 4 or 5 minutes of just watching this guy fly around.
he had one great play where he actually uh, it was against Penn State. They threw the ball to the tight end, and he like outwashed the tight ends rumbling down the field, and you see him fly in from behind, and he doesn't even hit him. He grabs the ball from behind, comes around in front of the tight end, pulls the tight end down to the ground as he takes the ball out of his hands. I was like, that is awesome. Like, I don't think he could do that to an NFL player, maybe, but maybe he can. Like, who knows? Like,
Yeah.
maybe, like that was pretty great. That was an attitude play. Like he was like, "Fuck you, having a good play. I'm gonna ruin this for you." Like that was his attitude, and I like that.
Yeah.
So now even worse, probably. Carlos Davis, defensive tackle out of Nebraska. You may recall that I said nose tackle was possibly the Steelers' greatest need heading into the draft, the only position in which they didn't really have a starter. The Steelers managed to address it in the seventh round. This is disappointing. The only thing that I can say positive about this is that I hope the Steelers plan on not really using a nose tackle, and that is sort of the indication in interviews that basically was given by like Kevin Colbert, who was their general manager, is that the nose tackle is not a position that matters in today's NFL. Um, which is good because Daniel McCullers and Carlos Davis are the Steelers' two nose tackles, and neither of them are special. Carlos Davis is he's got some quickness and strength, and he can absorb double teams at the college level, and in Nebraska that counts, Big Ten. Um, but he doesn't use that strength to really push the pocket. Um, I don't know. He's a seventh round pick. In the tape that I watched, the things that I liked him doing, they used him in stunts and loops a lot. So they'd run him kind of around the outside corner, have the defensive end crash down. I thought for a tackle, he had pretty good closing speed, and he wrapped up well. Um, he's a two sport athlete, and in track he threw the discus, so he's strong. He's got strong arms and strong hands. Um, and maybe with a year or two of focus and only playing one sport, he could kind of hone his technique and turn into something. I mean, Daniel McCullers isn't good, and he's been on the team for like 5 years. I think 2014 he was drafted. So um, that's kind of what Carlos Davis really has going for him, is that he is a two sport athlete with some athletic ability. The Steelers' defensive line coach is Carl Dunbar. He's pretty good at his job, and I think with just focusing, he's not throwing discus in the Olympics, so it's just football now. Um, there's a chance that 3 years from now he's a player that matters. That's what I'll say about Carlos Davis.
Yeah. Yeah. All around, I think a good draft. Um, just 6 picks. I think I saw most recently Pete Prisco gave him like a B minus, which like them and the Browns were B minuses and last in the division in draft grades. Like, so strong drafts all around the division. It's just hard with only 6 picks. Like, The Bengals had 7. I think the Browns had 9, and the Ravens had ended up with 10. And so 6 picks, but the like I said before we started talking about the Steelers drafted from a place where good franchises have the luxury of drafting from, which is like there's no glaring, it's not like the Bengals where you have a laundry list of weaknesses that you're hoping to find guys for. So, good
Yeah,
good draft. There was 2 Maryland Terps drafted this year. God
there you
damn.
go.
And
Uh,
6 in the last 2 years. So over the last 2 years, 6 Terps have been drafted. Half of them have gone to the Steelers.
there you go. We're luring
Ugh,
you in with the tractor beam.
I hate it.
And again, the one thing I will say to the Steeler fans that are with us here is the Steelers draft kind of philosophically opposite of the Ravens. So they miss on players, but you're not looking for the Steelers to get like an A+ draft grade because frankly their attitude is like how I build my fantasy team. Like I want to be better than Yahoo. Like I want to find the players that they don't think are good because I know they're good. And the Steelers do that. And it's a fair critique to say like, well good, get those players but draft them around later or like do it at a smarter time. That's just not a thing that Kevin Colbert is excels at. Um, so it's not going to happen. So as a Steeler fan, what you want is a B- C+ grade where the Steelers get a bunch of good players.
Yeah.
And for the most part, they generally do that. I wouldn't say over the last 10 years they're like an elite drafting team, but they are definitely well above average and they definitely make their hits. And like guys like TJ Watt are, you know, the guys we're talking about, where
Yeah.
people are like, oh, why did they take that guy like that? And it's like, well, because he's about to be Defensive Player of the Year. So that's what we're hoping for. We're hoping that it's another year like that where they did their reaches and they did it because they're smart. We'll see. 6 picks is tough. You only get 6 shots at it.
Yeah.
Um, Stay with us till next week when we'll talk about, the other really great way to do it. And that's to have lots of picks and get really great value and probably have a really good team. It'll be a shame when the Steelers beat them at home. Um, so two pretty good drafts. Two pretty good drafts from two teams that probably a lot of people are not going to pick to win the division. Although with Ben Roethlisberger back, don't be surprised if people give the Steelers a little bit of offseason love because they were 8-8 last year, and it's hard to imagine the Steelers not winning 2 more games with Ben Roethlisberger's quarterback play versus
Yeah.
what they got.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
So maybe playoffs. We'll see. We'll see if some of these rookies contribute. You want to talk about some other divisions briefly?
Yeah. Let's fly around a little bit. We picked the NFC North for one major reason. um, the story of round 1 was the Packers trading up to draft Jordan Love.
Yeah.
Not for another year, not drafting a first round skill position player for Aaron Rodgers. Basically serving notice. Lots of things have happened since the round 1 draft night. And sources are telling insiders that, like, basically it was a power move by LaFleur and the GM. His name is absurd. It's like Gutekunst. Like flexing on Aaron Rodgers to show him that like he's not the boss, basically. Like just insane stuff going on. But Jordan Love is widely recognized as a project player. I don't know what the hell they're doing. The
I
Vikings had
think,
like 20 draft picks, so they had a
yeah.
good draft.
So the Packers, um, I think that I don't hate the philosophy, right? Like they've had Hall of Fame quarterback play since I remember watching football. And part of how they did that is by continuously drafting quarterbacks when they thought they were good. They drafted Matt Hasselbeck while they had Brett Favre. They drafted somebody worse than Hasselbeck, but that started some and played backup for like 10 years.
Detmer.
No, it was someone better than him, but doesn't matter. They drafted Aaron Rodgers when Brett Favre was still good, and then they waited, which is, as you said, totally unorthodox at this point, and was still fairly unorthodox when they drafted
Yeah.
Rodgers. And then they got 10 more years of 12. I don't know how long it's been. A lot of years of Hall of Fame quarterback play. Guess what? The Packers are drafting a quarterback the very same age Aaron Rodgers as like Aaron Rodgers is the same age as Brett Favre was
Yeah.
when this happened. So what I said was, in my notes, now you know how it feels, Aaron. But here's a problem with the Packers. Then in the second round, they draft some running back that no one knows who he is. He might not even be a football player. They might be drafting him off Green Bay's G League basketball team's board. And now you're like, okay, now Aaron Jones knows that because they already have a good running back.
Yeah.
And then in the third round, they draft some tight end that no one's ever heard
Cole
of.
Kmet. Yeah.
No, no,
Oh no,
they
that's
didn't
the
get Cole
Bears.
Kmet. The Bears got Cole, and we'll talk about the Bears.
Yeah, a tight end
But
from Cincy. That's all I
his
wrote.
name is Josiah DeGuara, and he's basically James Devlin, but not awesome, And so it's like, well, now you're just punking us. Like, what are you doing? Like, I get I don't hate the philosophy. Like, if you think that there's a future starting quarterback and you're willing to wait, fine. But then they took crappy players for the rest,
Yeah.
and it's just like, I don't know if I like or don't like Aaron Rodgers. Like, publicly, he's an entertaining person. He's a fun player to watch, and his media sessions are funny. He's got wit. Um,
He's very tongue in cheek
it
with the
seems as
media.
though his wit might be channeled into being an asshole a lot of the time. Like, uh, I will say that I don't think it's good, and maybe this is just bad branding of what happened. I don't think it's good to send a message with your first round pick. You know what you do with your first round pick? You draft a player that's supposed to be on your team for 10 years. That's what you do with your first round pick. Like, you don't send messages.
You draft a player that can help your NFC Championship participant football team win now and get over the
Yeah,
hump.
and like e- even if that's what they're doing, the fact that they're saying that it was a message, like, no, you can say like, hey, it's a benefit that Aaron Rodgers is reminded of his place as a member of the organization. But like, dude, first round picks are worth too much to use them as a tool to be a nuisance to your star quarterback who you're paying like $39 million. Like, it's just bad branding. The whole message of it all, it's just bad. It makes the Packers look bad.
Yeah.
Um, it makes their draft look worse than it maybe even was. Um, they hurt themselves. They were the best team in the division. They didn't do themselves any favor with this draft. The only benefit to them is that the offseason is short and hopefully no rookies will matter. So it'll sort of hide the fact that I mean, you want to talk reaching. Like, the Packers did some serious reaching here. Like, they could have got these players rounds later. I said that plural just in case I wasn't enunciating into my microphone well enough. Like, these are players that were down the road when they picked them up. Um, Speaking of being silly, the Bears drafted Cole Kmet, who you mentioned. He was at the time their 10th tight end on the roster. 10th. 10th. I think they're down to 9.
It's like the Lions are that team. It's like some asshole in your fantasy league that drafts like 4 quarterbacks before anybody else drafts one, and then tries to just pillage everybody for decent quarterbacks. like
Yeah. The Bears had 2 second-round picks and no picks in the first, third, or fourth rounds. They used one of those second-round picks on Cole Kmet, who would be their 10th tight end on the like like you guys are playing 3D checkers or something over there.
Oh,
And I said checkers, not chess on purpose, because that's what the Bears are doing. They're playing 3D checkers. Um, so those are the two drafts I didn't like. I think the Vikings, I mean, they just had a million picks, like you said. I think the two that most need to be talked about at all, and that's because I've heard of them, are Justin Jefferson and Ezra Cleveland.
yep.
Justin Jefferson scored, let me check my stat book here, 65 touchdowns for LSU this year. I think it was actually 18. But dude, he scored so many touchdowns. Like
Yeah.
he's like a big new age slot receiver. He's like a way better version, slightly less tall than Chase Claypool, honestly. Great routes, contested catches, does everything. He will not play special teams. He's really good. He's really good. Like they will not miss Stephon Diggs, I don't think,
No.
at all. And Ezra Cleveland, if you're following the draft, there's kind of these four super good tackles, offensive tackles, and then there was like three or four below them that were just also very good. And Ezra Cleveland was kind of like the one that maybe was sticking out in that group. So that could be a really good value on the offensive line. Getting him in the second round. And then they drafted two corners, which makes sense because they got rid of every single corner on the team. So they sort of had to do that.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about those corners. I didn't watch them play on any tape.
Yeah.
But,
I know
you know,
Gladney was pretty highly touted. Um, but it just depends on your opinions of uh, Big 12 defenses. I mean,
right.
but yeah, I mean, they had very clear holes, right? They lost Diggs. Hi, Wesley. They lost Diggs. They lost all their corners. Like, getting help on the O line. Like, yeah, those three guys, like,
Yeah.
stuck out
So,
to me.
so you got to like that. You got to like it. The Vikings had 4 picks in the first 3 rounds. They piled it up. They piled it up with hopefully good players, at least two really good players, and then two early round corners. And you got to figure at least one of them will probably be good, separate
Yeah.
themselves. And then the Lions, dude, I like it.
Yeah. They
I
had a
like
nice
what's going on
draft.
here. So they snatched up Jeff Okuda. Everyone saw that coming. Jeff Okuda, I didn't watch any of his tape either. You're going to hear that a lot from me, but I didn't need to because he's basically been described as the perfect corner. He's just perfect. He's big. He's fast. He doesn't ever do anything wrong. you know, he's just perfect. He's Darius Slay, but better. Probably not better yet, but he could be better, and he's way cheaper. Um, so fine, that's great. I don't really like that as a philosophy, and we can get into that more down the line. I don't like the idea of team building where you like get rid of a super good expensive player and then replace them with I think a soon to be super good cheap player because you need to be building a team. You need to keep your really good players as many as you can and then get more. Like this the Lions aren't a good enough team to just be playing replace. They don't
Yeah.
like how
It's
many
like
really good
Patricia's
players?
trying to do the Belichick thing.
Yeah,
But it's
like
like what
dude,
all the New England disciples do.
the Lions
But,
have what, 4 really good players total. Darius Slay
right.
was one of them. So like, yeah, you can't. It doesn't work. But anyway, he's a really good player, so it's still a good draft. And then they did the second round thing, which we'll talk about more next week, which is to grab a running back that probably should have been a first round pick. DeAndre Swift, I think he maybe was Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
So he's great. And Detroit running game, like they could use it. They've got on Johnson, but there's definitely room. There is definitely room for more carries that are productive on the Lions. That's 100%. And then they had 2 third-round picks. They got another one of those. They got the top ranked guard from Dane Brugler's draft report named Jonah Jackson. He played at Ohio State. They had a pretty darn good running game. Um, so we're feeling good. We're feeling good about. I'm feeling good about Detroit's early picks.
Yeah, yeah. I think Detroit, those top three, Okuda, Swift, and Jonah Jackson, like Detroit was one of these weird teams where it felt like they were in a lot of games, the whole NFC North. It's like the Packers didn't feel like they were that good, but they won a shitload of games, and the Lions were kind of like the opposite of that, where like they were in a bunch of games with good teams, but they just found ways to lose games. They had like weird games against the Chargers, and I think they had a game against the Broncos where like they lost in a big comeback loss, like, and I think they're building something. Um, but yeah, I agree with the whole Slay thing. It's the whole Belichick coaching tree. No matter how you feel about Belichick, it's like all these guys go different places, and you hear about the players not liking the coaches and this and that because they try to come in and be the taskmaster, Bill Belichick, but they don't have the equity, the success equity of Bill Belichick, and these players are like, who the fuck is this guy? And I think that's Patricia's trying to kind of channel that. I think with like getting rid of Slay before he gets paid, and but like you said, like you're not there yet, bro. Like
Yeah, and it's, you don't have the success equity and you don't have the talent pool, like Bill Belichick to his he's also just on a different level, but like he just had more talented players. Like if you have a team that's devoid of talent, even if it's like smart by cap standards and other things, like you can't get better by replacing a talented player with a talented player. Like
yeah,
you need to add numbers. That said, though, I like the Lions draft, especially competing against the rest. The Vikings probably won this division um, with their
yeah.
draft just by sheer numbers. Is the would you rather fight a one bear or 10,000 bees? Um, you lose both. So I think the Lions and the Vikings did pretty well. The Bears had very few picks and used them to make us make jokes. Although they did draft a corner, we didn't talk about that much, but generally when the Bears draft a corner, I just assume they're really good.
Yeah.
So Jalen Johnson, keep an eye out for him. Hope he's not guarding your favorite player because he'll probably peanut punch the shit out of the ball and make you sad. Um, and the Packers look like an embarrassment right now, which is a shame because they're a storied franchise and they're publicly owned and they got a lot of cool things going for them that all sound stupid because they keep doing dumb stuff.
And Rodgers has been silent since all this, but he was on the Pat McAfee show on draft night and
Oh
was
yeah,
like, it'd be real nice if we draft an offensive weapon with the first pick because we haven't in 15 years. And then they drafted Jordan Love and
traded
Pat
up too.
McAfee, so they traded up to draft Jordan Love. And McAfee said that Aaron Rodgers was supposed to call back in to give like live reaction to the Packers draft pick, but it was they just said, "Hey, call back in at whatever time," because they were trying to plan out the draft, and so they made their pick before Rodgers was supposed to call back. But they were McAfee was like, "Yeah, if we had Aaron Rodgers on, I would have just told you guys to dump him, like to protect Aaron Rodgers from like being live on that." But poor guy.
Well, there's always Danica Patrick and crystal therapy.
True. Yoga.
So you're thinking do some other divisions next week? We've been
Yeah,
at
we're
it.
running almost an hour and a half here. So,
God, I was excited to make fun of the Patriots.
I know.
I'll
I
hold it.
know.
I'll hold it in, but just so you know, holding these types of emotions inside creates chemical responses that are not healthy. So we need to talk about the Patriots next time we podcast because I am excited to tear that franchise down.
Let's do
Mostly what I'll be doing is sifting through the rubble like an archaeologist. They tore themselves down.
it. And with that, like, subscribe, rate, comment, share this with your friends, and come back. We'll probably be back sometime this weekend, one of these evenings this weekend, to talk about the other half of the division, some other divisions in football, and just hang out, talk sports, and drink beer because Korean baseball's the only thing that's on anymore. Fuck.
Maybe we'll do a 2 months after the fact review of Last Dance because
Yeah.
it's so topical to what we are experts at.
Yeah, for sure. Maybe we can pick like a we can do like a football life episodes watching club like review. Ugh, kill me. All right, everybody. Have a good one. We'll see you later.